Good evening, everyone at Tushita and online, and welcome to this session, this introduction to the Buddha's teachings. So before we start, we will do a short meditation so that, we arrive here in the space at Tushita and leave the heat and our worries outside and at home, to give you some time to arrive in front of your device, on your cushion, on your chair. So we can start by taking 3 deep breaths. And every time we inhale, we try to refresh our attention. Every time we exhale, we relax. So then we will do a short shamatha meditation. Shamatha is Sanskrit for calm abiding. And more specifically, what we will do is a single pointed meditation. So basically we are trying to take one object and place all our attention, all our focus on that object. So for this there are 4 instructions, and the first one is the body posture. So the best is to sit on the floor, but if you're sitting on the chair, it's also perfectly fine. If you're sitting on the chair, just make sure you're not leaning against the support of the chair and not leaning forward either. If you're sitting on the floor, the ideal is to sit in the full lotus posture. That means both feet on top of the opposite leg. That's a little bit challenging if you're not used to it, so make sure you're not pushing your body, you're not forcing yourself. You can simply sit cross-legged, or in a half lotus, or even Burmese style with one leg in front of the other. Traditionally, we place the hands in the mudra of concentration. You have your right hand on top of the left, the 2 thumbs are slightly touching, and this rests on your lap. The back is straight, the body is upright. You can imagine that there is a string pulling from the crown of your head, keeping your body upright. But at the same time, we remain relaxed and the body is flexible. You can easily turn from left to right like this. The shoulders are even and relaxed, and the neck is aligned with the spine. You can very slightly tilt the head forward, but not much. A tip of the ancient masters is to place your tongue towards the upper palate, just behind the upper teeth. This helps to reduce the production of saliva while you meditate. And finally, the eyes, we leave them slightly open. We don't close them completely, but we don't actually pay attention to what our eyes are seeing. It is the mental consciousness that meditates. So you can rest your gaze just 1 or 2 meters in front of you, about 45 degrees cast down. So this allows for some light to enter, keeping you alert. So this posture is known as the Buddha Vairochana meditation posture. Out of the 7 points, the most important is for the body to be upright, for the back to be straight. So for shamatha practice, the next instruction is the object of meditation. What are we actually meditating on? So if you're familiar with single-pointed concentration, I would recommend you stick to the object you're the most familiar with. If you don't have an object you're familiar with, I would suggest you take the breathing sensation at the entrance of the nostrils. Try to place all your attention on the breathing sensation at the entrance of the nostrils, and try to remain there as long as you can. You might feel as you breathe in, it's a little bit cooler, as you breathe out, a little bit warmer and neutral when between 2 breaths. Then the third instruction is the identifying the ways we get distracted in meditation. So we tend to lose our object, we tend to get distracted. And the two main ways, the first one is called mental excitement. Basically, we are distracted with thoughts, mostly thinking about past and future, and therefore not remaining on our object of meditation. The second way we tend to get distracted is with mental laxity, or dullness, or lethargy. We are not putting enough application in our concentration, and therefore the mind starts to sink. We have a tendency to fall asleep. So finally, the fourth and last instruction is that there are two antidotes against these two ways we get distracted. The first antidote is called introspection or alertness. It is a small part of our mind in the background that is checking, what is my mind doing? Is it meditating, or has it lost the object of meditation? Has it wandered in thoughts, or is my mind falling into dullness, into laxity? And the moment this introspection, this alertness, which is like, you can imagine it is like a security camera in the background of your mind, that is looking, what is your mind doing? The moment this introspection notices that the mind has wandered, that the mind is not focused anymore on the object of meditation, then we make use of the second antidote, which is called mindfulness. And the role of mindfulness is to remember the object of meditation, and so therefore to bring the mind back onto the object, and making sure it stays there, it remains on the object of meditation. There is an analogy that I use often. It is if you have a pet dog at home and the dog runs away from home. Introspection notices that the dog is gone, and mindfulness brings the dog back home. You can also imagine tying him against a pillar so that he remains at home. So it is a bit similar to what we are doing with our mind, trying to focus entirely on the object of meditation, for example, the breathing sensation at the entrance of the nostrils, while at the same time, a small part of the mind is checking, am I actually doing that, or am I distracted? The moment I find myself distracted, I use mindfulness to bring the mind back onto the object. So we'll try this meditation for about 5 minutes. gently come out of the meditation. So know that our minds are hopefully a bit more concentrated, a bit more focused. We will try to establish a good motivation for this session. So we'll recite one verse of homage to the Buddha, and then try to generate a motivation that we are not going to listen only for ourselves, but in order to benefit others as well. So we can recite together, and hopefully online you can also see my screen. I think so. I'm not sure. I think so, yes. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. So the next verse, we'll read it once in English, and then we have the Tibetan just underneath that we can chant. So first we familiarize ourselves with the meaning, and then there's a beautiful, in Tibetan it's beautiful, the tune as well. So we'll also chant twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soki chonam la jonchu bhadu dagne kyabsuchi dagi jinso gipe tsoknam ki jola penchir sangye chuparasho. Sangye chodan soki chonam la jonchu bhadu dagne kyabsuchi dagi jinso gipe tsoknam ki Jola penchir sangye juparasho. So tonight we'll explore together. As an introduction, we have people who are coming here for the first time, and I think as well online. So we'll explore a little bit what are the teachings of the Buddha about. And specifically, what is the mind? Where does it come from? And all these questions. I just would like to make clear that I'm a student, I'm not a teacher, and I'm not a guru. So I might not have all the, answers to your questions, but I would like to invite as many questions as possible. Especially while I'm talking, if you don't understand what I'm saying, please interrupt me. If you don't understand my accent or something like that, or if I'm not making sense, or if you have a related question directly to what I'm saying, please interrupt me. And at the end, we'll try to keep some time for broader questions if you have. But bear in mind that I might not have the answer, and then in that case, I will direct you to someone who knows much more. So I thought I'll just introduce myself briefly for those who don't know me. My name is Nico, and I'm originally from Belgium. And I dedicated the last 10 years of my life to the study and practice of the Buddha's teachings. Initially, my journey started here in India, in Himachal Pradesh, in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama lives in exile. And for 4 years, I spent my time in Buddhist centers like this one, mostly in Dharamsala, in Bodhgaya, in Bihar, where the Buddha attained enlightenment, and in Kathmandu, in Nepal. Then the Tibetan Lamas actually advised me to go to France. We have a Buddhist monastery in the south of France that is called Nalanda. And I studied there for 5 years, an intense program. And then when I graduated, I decided to come back to India to pursue my studies. Actually, here in Delhi, we have the cultural center of the Dalai Lama, which is called Tibet House. It is directed by top scholar who actually used to be the interpreter of the Dalai Lama from Tibetan to English. And now His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, appointed him here in Delhi. And so he's a Geshe. Geshe literally means virtuous friend. It is the title that is given to those scholars who studied the Buddha's teachings in the big monasteries for about 20 years. It is the equivalent of a PhD, if you will, in Buddhist philosophy. So, yes, I came back to India to study with him. All right. So, also a small note. This is a famous quote of the Buddha, which says, "Just as a goldsmith tests gold by rubbing, burning, and cutting before buying it, so too you should examine my words before accepting them, and not just out of respect for me." So the Buddha actually was a logician, and he wants us to check, his words with logic and reasoning. He wants us to see if they make sense or not. So whatever the Buddha taught over several decades, he taught from his own experience. And his teachings then have been passed on from generation to generation to generation by many masters who also analyzed, checked the teachings until they eventually become their own experience. For example, nowadays, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is considered, for the Tibetans, they see him as the embodiment of the Buddha of compassion. So he also spent, years, decades to study the philosophy. And, gradually when we study and meditate, then the teachings become our own experience. Actually, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is also, I think there was a movie released recently that is called The Scientist. He's very much interested in science, and I don't know these days, but it used to be at least once a year there was a huge conference with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the top scientists, the top neuroscientists, the top biologists, the top chemists, and so on and so forth. To exchange, to have a dialogue between science and Buddhism, to see, what points are similar, what points are a little bit different, where does it converge? And what I would like also to say for people who are coming here for the first time, people who are hearing about meditation and Buddhist philosophy for the first time, we talk about so many different things. You can imagine it's like a big supermarket, and from the shelves you take whatever you're comfortable with. If there is some idea you feel that sounds a little bit, you don't feel ready to listen to that, you can leave it on the shelf for now. Whatever you pick up from the shelf, you check, you analyze with logic and reasoning if it makes sense. And then gradually maybe you can pick up more things from the shelves. So to start with, I would like to ask you, here in person as well as online, I will give you also the possibility to unmute yourself if I find the button. Just give me a second. Okay, so now online as well, you must be able to unmute yourself. So I would like to ask you, what do you think is the mind? Any idea? What is the mind?
Is it pran?
Please say again.
Is it pran? Like pran, the conscious pran?
Consciousness.
Yeah, like a conscious prana. We do prani, or like the word itself is yeah, pretty similar to consciousness.
Consciousness, all right. Any other idea?
Mind is the driver of the body and it drives us.
Thoughts, influx of thoughts.
Thoughts, the driver of the body.
And
Yes.
and it's very much related to the soul of the body.
Soul of the body.
I have a related question. Where is mind exactly in the body?
At the moment, I'm asking you a question. What is the mind?
I don't know. It's
It's a thing which helps us interpret our sense experience.
Something that helps us interpret our sense experiences. Any
It is
more
the place where we do all the thinking, the main thinking.
The place where we do all the main thinking.
Thinking.
Something more to add?
That's it.
Some people call it the monkey mind also, because
The monkey mind.
it keeps jumping and the thoughts keep shifting from one place to the other.
an analytical mind also.
Analytical mind. So I see also on the chat some people are saying our inner consciousness, and somebody is saying egocentric sign. Okay, so let us look. In the meanwhile, if you're not speaking, please don't forget to mute yourself again so we don't hear, different sounds. Somebody else is saying thoughts. So if we look at the theistic view, for example, the Christians or even the Hindus, like you talked about the soul, or I think when it comes to Hindus, we also call it Atman or soul. So it is described as something that is not physical and, goes from life to life, I believe, no? The Atman, at least. I think in the Christian view, it is that which also goes to the alto life, like the heaven or hell, right? And then when it comes to the materialistic view, many scientists, when we talk about mind, well, maybe not many scientists, but some scientists, when we talk about mind, they talk about the brain, or they talk about our genes, or they talk about our DNA. But for the Buddha, actually, the mind is none of these two. The Buddha is not talking about the soul. The Buddha is not talking about the brain. He's talking about, as you guys were saying, all of our inner experiences. Our thoughts, our feelings, our intellect, our awareness, our emotions, our intuition, our instinct, and so forth. So in Buddhism, all of these, they fall into the category of consciousness or mind. These two are actually synonymous. They mean the same thing, consciousness and mind. For the Buddha, there is not one atom of our being that is created by a superior being, like a god, not even created by Buddha or any other superior being. From the experience of the Buddha, this is the mind, which is also not created by our parents. So we cannot blame, our parents for whatever bad experiences we have. So of course our body comes from our parents. It has been created, at the time of conception when the union of the egg and sperm happened. So we have this body thanks to our parents. So the mind, as I was saying, is synonymous with consciousness. It is something that is formless. And its definition is clear and knowing. So clear is actually its entity, its nature. Knowing is its function, its characteristic. So there are different ways to explain these two. Clear we can say that it is clear in the sense that it is not obstructive because it is not physical, it is formless. It is also clear in the sense that it reflects like a mirror or a still lake reflects objects. Objects appear to our consciousness, to our mind. So it is clear in that sense, like a still lake or a mirror. And also clear in the sense that it is naturally free from impurities. Our, mental disturbations, our negative emotions. The Buddha teaches us that they are adventitious, meaning that they are not intrinsically part of our mind. They can be eliminated, they can be removed. So this shows us the potential of our mind. We call this Buddha nature. Then the second part of the definition, knowing. So as I was saying, objects appear to our consciousness. Our consciousness knows the objects that they apprehend. For example, right now I'm looking at my screen, and this appears to my consciousness, this appears to my mind. Or if I close my eyes and I think of a pink elephant, the image of a pink elephant appears to my mind. So another important point is that the mind is not created by God, not created by our parents, not created even by the Buddha. It is beginningless and it is endless. But then you might ask, if the mind is not physical, if it doesn't come from our parents or a superior being, then where does it come from? So clearly, we cannot say that the mind comes from nothing. Everything we see around us, everything we see in the universe comes from causes and conditions. So this computer, for example, it is made from plastics, metals, and so forth. Or this bowl as well, this singing bowl. We can't say it suddenly appeared here in and of itself. That would be absurd. So we are actually talking about a mental continuum. I tried to represent this with this arrow, that has no beginning, no end. So for the mind, the consciousness, it is the same thing as with this computer or this ball. The mind didn't appear out of nothing in and of itself. Actually, consciousness or mind comes from a previous moment of consciousness. So this continuum has no beginning, no end. For Christians, for example, the soul that we were talking about has a beginning because it is the creation of God. So the moment God created the soul, it began. But our mind, if we look for a beginning, for a first moment of consciousness, if we think, for example, our consciousness was created when we were born, or if we consider reincarnation and think our consciousness was created 50 lifetimes ago, it doesn't make sense, because if we were to find a first moment of consciousness, then we should also find what caused it. And what caused it? Actually, a previous moment of consciousness. So the point of view of the Buddha is that the mind has no beginning. So I tried to illustrate this on this endless arrow. So if we take the present moment, for example, our mind looking at this screen and looking at this zero, where does this mind come from? It comes from the previous moment of mind, the moment -1. And where does this moment -1 of consciousness comes from? It comes from the previous moment of consciousness, here represented as -2, and so on and so forth. So then another question that we might ask ourselves, is the mind the brain? So this is the materialistic view. Some scientists actually think that the mind is the brain, or the consciousness is the brain. So let us think about this. So I would like to invite you to close your eyes for a few seconds and think of the last time you saw your mother. or the female caregiver, you know, who took care of you as a child. So you can open your eyes, and probably in your mind you have a somewhat realistic image of your mother or female caregiver. But when neuroscientists measure our brain activity while we are, you know, thinking about our mother, what they see looks like this. They see, you know, brain waves and so forth. And actually, these are very different from our thoughts that are actually going on in our minds. And these thoughts are not physical. So scientists can see these brain waves and so forth, but they don't see our actual thoughts. They don't see the image of our mother that we have in our mind. So we experience these thoughts in our minds, but we don't see these brain waves. So these brain waves and our thoughts are not identical. So there is a mantra that is called the essence of dependent origination mantra that says in Sanskrit, Om ye dharma hetu prabhava, hetum tesham tathagato, hayavada tesham chayo, nirodha evam vadi maha shramanaye swaha, which means all phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of the causes as well is taught by the great seer. Tathagata is another name given to the Buddha. So he's telling us that nothing comes out of nothing. Nothing, yes, there is nothing that comes out from nothing, right? Everything has causes. And the Buddha also teaches the cessation of the causes, mainly related to our, you know, mental disturbations, our negative emotions, and so forth. So this is also what I think scientists are saying, that nothing is created out of nothing, and also nothing vanishes. Everything transforms. Our body, for example, it didn't appear without causes. It has a continuity. The body comes from the egg and sperm at the time of conception, and at the time of death, the body will not disappear, you know, instantly. Suddenly, it is going to decompose over time. It will transform. The atoms that compose our body, they will gradually become energy, and that energy will become atoms again, you know, at some point. So therefore, the particles that compose our body, they will never really vanish. So if at the physical level we have that conclusion, we can infer that at the mental level this logic also applies. So before having this current body, our mind was incorporated into another body. And after we die, again, because of the karma that we have accumulated karma due to our, you know, mental disturbations, our negative emotions. For example, desire, attachment, anger, jealousy, and so forth. So our mind at the time of death will again be subject to rebirth in another body. So the Buddha teaches us that we have been taking birth again and again and again since beginningless time because of karma and afflictions or mental disturbations or negative emotions. Sometimes we are born as human, sometimes we are born as an animal, for example. So that is why, you know, Buddhists don't even kill mosquitoes. We don't want to hurt, you know, anyone who has a mind, anyone who has feelings. And also because, you know, if we consider rebirth, if we consider that we have been reborn since beginningless time into countless bodies, then we could also infer, you know, that at some point, the mosquito that is making noise in our ear or, you know, making us scratch our body, at one point or the other, this mosquito must have been our friend or our family member, you know, in countless past lives. It must have happened mathematically, you know. So the next image that I would like to show you is called the Wheel of Life. So it is often shown at the entrance of temples. And this reminds us why we come here. Actually, the reason we enter a temple is to learn about our mind and to transform our mind to actually escape the current condition of our mind. In Sanskrit, it is called samsara. In English, that means cyclic existence. You know, the fact that we are continuously taking rebirth again and again and again without control. The fact that sometimes we are born human, sometimes we are born animal, sometimes as a human we have a happy life, sometimes we are very poor or we have many problems. We don't have control over that. And this has been happening since beginningless time. So this samsara is actually the prison of our own mind, the vicious prison of our own mind, in which we are trapped. So on the image, the wheel is held by Yama. Yama is the Lord of Death. In general, it represents impermanence and death, in the sense that death is inevitable, you know. Whatever we do, in 100 years, none of us here in this room would still be around, right? So the experience of impermanence and death, we go through it without much control. So his two hands actually represent the karmas and afflictions that are binding us in cyclic existence. At the top, you have the Buddha at the top right, who's pointing at the moon on the other side, and the moon represents liberation. In Sanskrit, liberation is called nirvana. I'm sure you've heard that word before. So he indicates that it is possible to be liberated. It is possible to attain nirvana. On some paintings, there are also written instructions under the moon, or sometimes under the wheel, and these instructions say, strive to eliminate the defilements or the mental disturbations. Enter into the teachings of the awakened one. Just as an elephant in the midst of huts, destroy the host of the Lord of Death. Those with conscientiousness engage in the Dharma of pacification, abandon the cycle of birth, and bring an end to the miseries. At the center of the wheel, we have represented the three poisons. So you know you have, I think, a pig, a snake, and a bird, and they represent our root delusions, which are self-grasping ignorance, attachment, and anger. The second circle, you know, half of it is black, half of it is white. This represents the positive and the negative karmas we accumulate. The third circle is the realms, the different realms of existence of samsara, in which we are constantly circling, such as the human realm and the animal realm. And then the outer circle, you know, represents what is called the 12 links of dependent origination that are giving us details on how we are actually circling in samsara. It gives us more information why, you know, this happens. So we are not going to go through these 12 links today, but actually I have a recording, if you want, on the Tushita channel, if you type the 3 scopes, where I go through these 12, if you want to know more about them. But for today, as an introduction talk, it's a little bit too much. So I would like to explain a little bit more about these, you know, 3 poisons, about the positive, the negative karmas, the realms of existence, and how we are circling. So Arya Nagarjuna, you have a photo here actually. He was a great scholar in Nalanda University in present-day Bihar in India. So in the Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, which is one of the texts he composed, he gives a concise summary of the wheel of life. He says, ceasing of karmas and afflictions leads to nirvana. Karmas and afflictions arise from conceptual thought. These arise from mental elaborations, grasping at true existence. Elaborations cease by or into emptiness. So basically, the core of the practice for Buddhists is loving kindness, wishing others as well as ourselves to be free from suffering. We can see with our own eyes that there is so much suffering, Here in Delhi, in this heat, it's so easy. We can see people, living in the street without an AC, without a fan, without a shelter. So we can easily relate, to the suffering of others. We can see people around us who are suffering from sickness. We can infer what it must be like, for those people who live in countries that are at war, such as the Middle East and Ukraine at the moment, for example. We can also relate to the suffering of animals. We can think in the wilderness how animals are living in a constant fear of being, hunted by predators. Even when they are sleeping, they are not, completely at rest, always careful that a predator might come at any time. We can also, think of the animals that we humans consider as food, how we are treating them, like thousands of them living in tiny places for a few months before they are sent to the slaughterhouse. So we can also, easily see the suffering around us with our own eyes. So the Buddha teaches us that the causes of our suffering is karma and afflictions. The karmas are all the actions we engage in. Sometimes, positive actions, and sometimes negative or non-virtuous actions. So these are motivated by our afflictions, our mental disturbations, for example, anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, anxiety, and so on. And all of these mental afflictions, all these mental delusions, they are rooted in what we call self-grasping ignorance. So self-grasping ignorance is this, innate impression that we all have. We apprehend phenomena, including ourselves, as existing so solidly, so truly, like we apprehend things as existing inherently, intrinsically, objectively, from their own side. We apprehend phenomena as existing independently from the mind. So because of this misconception, we have this impression that we are the center of the universe. We kind of feel that we are the superhero of our own movie. Everything revolves around us. And we feel more important than others. But if we check this, it doesn't make any sense because others are numberless. I am only one. And others, just like myself, they want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. So because of this self-grasping ignorance and this impression that we are the center of the universe, all sorts of mental afflictions arise, as I was saying, like anger, jealousy, excessive desire, pride, jealousy, and so forth. And because of these afflictions, we are constantly engaging in actions most of the time actions that are negative or non-virtuous, such as, killing, stealing, lying, gossiping, using harsh words, divisive speech. And these negative actions, these non-virtuous actions, they accumulate negative karma. And the reason why we experience pain or unpleasant moments is precisely because of these negative karmas that we have accumulated in the past. Not necessarily in this life. The Buddha is talking since beginningless time. We have engaged in actions that are negative. They have left a karmic imprint on our mind, and the karmas, they ripen. When the causes and conditions are ready, the karmas, they ripen, and we experience something pleasant or unpleasant. For example, here all of a sudden, we might have the collective karma that the electricity stops to function. Then no AC, no fan, and the heat coming from outside. We don't have much control. We cannot decide if this is going to happen or not. Similarly, someone might come, with chocolates all of a sudden and distribute chocolate to all of us. We also don't have control if this is going to happen or not. So somebody bringing chocolate would be the result of, if you like chocolate, would be the result of a positive karma that we have accumulated in the past. So virtuous actions, such as, for example, helping others, practicing generosity, these positive actions, these virtuous actions, they accumulate a positive karma. But positive karmas, still they are contaminated by this self-grasping ignorance. For example, now on the way here, I just gave, a small note to a beggar in the street. And while doing that, I saw the beggar as solidly real, like existing from his own side, like inherently existing, independent from my mind. And myself, the giver, so generous, giving 20 rupees, wow, also so solidly existing, and the action of giving the 20 rupees, also so solidly, existing. So because of that, yes, it's a positive action. But because of this apprehension that these three spheres, the recipient, the action, and the giver exist objectively, because of that, it is a contaminated positive karma, meaning that eventually it will ripen in the form of a pleasant experience, such as receiving a chocolate or whatever. But this happens within samsara, this happens within cyclic existence. It is not, the chocolate maybe will give me, a little bit of pleasure for a few seconds, and I cannot choose when I will receive this chocolate, of course. So this lack of control, is precisely what samsara is, Now, I cannot decide if the AC is going to stop or if somebody is going to bring chocolate. And at the moment of death, any of the countless karmas that I've accumulated in the past might ripen because of what is going on in my mind at that time. When I pass away, I might feel very attached to my body. I might be scared. I don't want to die, I might have strong attachment to my friends and family. I don't want to lose them, to my possessions. So this is a very, grasping attachment state of mind plus fear. So that probably will trigger a negative karma that I've accumulated in the past and throw me, to an unfortunate next rebirth. Any questions so far about samsara, reincarnation, the mind? Yes?
Mind, what I hear is mind is one entity.
Can you say again?
What I gather is, mind is taking rebirth
Mind is taking rebirth and rebirth.
and I think the last is right where I gather self-grasping ignorance
Yes.
is what is, you know, it's like a jail, and we are in that for months and months, and that is getting carried forward.
That is
That is getting carried forward.
carried forward. Yes.
So my question
It's like the self-grasping ignorance is getting carried from birth to
carried
birth.
forward
Yes.
from birth to birth.
Yes.
And here today I gather is that mind is getting reborn and reborn. Okay, so my question is, my conclusion is, so how do we, is the mind or the self-grasping ignorance which is taking rebirth, or they are both interrelated?
Well, self-grasping ignorance is a mind,
Is the mind,
is a mind.
is part of the mind.
Like me apprehending the computer is a mind. Me thinking about my mother is a mind. Me thinking that the computer exists objectively.
That is happening in the brain, or is that happening in the mind?
So this is what
That reflection is the brain, or is
this is what we were exploring, you know, that these thoughts, these inner experience that we have,
the intellect is different from the mind?
intellect happens within the mind, right? The mind is the all of our inner
Where
experiences.
is the mind in our body?
So mind is formless, right? So you're asking me, where is a formless thing into a form?
Reframe my question. Is somewhere in the head, or is somewhere in the body? I'm very confused about it, not since now, since years and years. When I started studying philosophy, in the early 90s, I read so much about that thought. Actually, there is never any mention exactly where the mind is. So when I read about this, I thought that I should sit down and feeling those sensations, feeling better and everything. The whole body is the layers in the body is the mind. So also I've learned, I read. Another conclusion was, another interpretation was, another analysis was, mind is somewhere here. I'm talking very layman's language, not religion.
So actually,
Here, when I'm busy, I'm thinking from somewhere here. I'm analyzing from somewhere this portion. I'm not talking about the teaching or the ritual. When I'm analyzing, thinking, I'm living life for years, somewhere of this portion it's all happening. It doesn't happen in my arm, on my body.
and when
So where is that particular?
Aditya, when you meet someone who is very sick, for example, and you feel compassion for that person, at that time, do you also have this?
I think there's a different, I am not able to analyze right now spontaneously, but somewhere it does get triggered. But now, over a period of years, now I become very indifferent. Not very, I try to be indifferent. I used to be very giving at one time, not compassionate. It doesn't flow inside me naturally, so I don't try to imitate compassion. So I prefer to be naturally what I am. I like being like that naturally. I will not try to imitate compassion. I am not compassionate. I used to be giving.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Two brothers.
So let's say one of your brother, you hear that he has any, disease. Will you not feel, I don't want him to have that? I don't want him to be sick. Would you feel that or not? So when we feel that, do you also have this that you were describing, that you feel that it's happening around here?
I have a tendency to be a thinker. So I think and think and I also
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
So there is, I'm forgetting the name of the professor, but he's at NYU. So he calls something the hard problem of consciousness. So when we talk about consciousness, I think he, like the way he was showing us that picture, where you can have like different things inside our brain, and depending on what we are doing, there are different signals. But we cannot know if it's causation or if it's just interdependence. So I think that's where probably we confuse a little bit. That is the brain waves causing this activity, or is the activity causing it, or are both existing simultaneously? So it's like a similar analogy would be like the way asking about where is mind. Like a similar question probably would be where is hunger. So we can find out like different pieces of our body, like different biological pieces of our body, but I don't know if we would be able to point where is hunger, but we do feel hunger. That doesn't have to exist physically. Like,
Can you remind me your name, please?
Hush.
Hush is saying that, for example, hunger, right? We cannot pinpoint, that it's in the brain or in the stomach or something, but we do feel it, right? So the scientists, they are talking about like a interdependence, no, between our organs and the mind. But we cannot really pinpoint where is the mind, right?
Yeah, even the scientist, he said that like there are these brain activities that are happening, but we cannot say that is the mind because it's just happening. We can't establish causation.
So actually, Aditya, in the sutric teachings, we talk about a formless mind that is not physical. So you cannot really, pinpoint anywhere in the body and say the mind is there or the mind is there. That being said, to, maybe give you the answer you're looking for, in the tantric teachings, it is mentioned that the very subtle mind actually resides at the heart. Just food for thought. Okay, maybe we can move on to another question.
What is the state of nirvana? Is it because, as you just explained, that mind is cyclic, right? So nirvana is like attaining the supreme knowledge, attaining the, what I can say, in Buddhism there is a term called enlightenment. So attaining the enlightenment, or if it is enlightenment, then again we have to go through the cyclic form of mind, or what exactly it is? The nirvana, like just the word.
Okay, so nirvana, and you use the word enlightenment or awakening or Buddhahood, or I think you were also talking about omniscience. So these are two different things. Like nirvana is the cessation of all the mental afflictions and karmas, all the negative emotions, disturbing emotions, including self-grasping ignorance, which is the root of all the other afflictions. This is nirvana, this absence of the mental afflictions. And when they are removed, automatically no more karma, right? So therefore also no more suffering. Actually, those people who have reached nirvana are referred to as the arhats. They don't experience suffering anymore. They are not subject to the Lord of Death, Yama, anymore. They're not circling in samsara anymore. They're liberated forever. Because they eliminated the root of all the problems, which is the self-grasping ignorance. Now, Buddhahood, or awakening, or enlightenment, is beyond that. It is not only having eliminated the mental afflictions, but also having eliminated the cognitive obscurations. The obscurations to knowledge, the obscurations to omniscience. When one has eliminated both of these, the afflictions and the cognitive obscurations, one achieves the state of a Buddha, the state of omniscience, the state of awakening, which is also forever. Once you have eliminated, let's say, a palm tree, you know, from the root, the palm tree will never grow again. Of course, if you just cut a few leaves, a few branches, you know, it might grow again. But if you know, uproot it completely, it will never grow again. So similarly, when we uproot the afflictions completely from the root, which is self-grasping ignorance, they will never come back. Yes, moon is symbolic of nirvana. Yes, yes. Okay, you might have more questions coming up. So actually the next thing we'll touch about your question, the next thing I would like to talk about is Buddha nature. In Sanskrit it is called Tathagata Karma. So that is an important point. Oh, and by the way, those who are online, it would be, because I see that you're writing on the chat, a lot of you, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and interrupt me. That would be much easier. So Buddha nature. One important point is, what is the nature of our mind? What is Buddha nature? It is actually our potential to become a fully awakened Buddha. That is the potential of our mind, our Buddha nature. So, you know, we often have existential questions. We ask ourselves, who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? What role am I playing, you know, on this planet? So for the Buddha, the answer is simple. The goal is to achieve full awakening in order to benefit all those who are endowed with a mind and who are trapped in samsara, who are trapped in their own mind. So for the Buddha, this is the goal, you know, of our life, to help others. And how to help others best is by becoming completely liberated, not only from the afflictions, but also from the cognitive obscurations. Once we are liberated from both of these, we achieve the state of omniscience, knowing perfectly how to guide others to do the same, you know, to liberate themselves from their own mind. So we talk about helping sentient beings. We want to become awakened to help sentient beings. So what is a sentient being? In Tibetan, it is Sem-chen. That makes it a little bit clearer, I find. Sem-chen literally means mind possessor. All those who possess a mind. So we want to help them because of the suffering experiences that they are having due to their, you know, the negative karmas they accumulate because of their afflictions that are rooted in self-grasping ignorance. So we want to help them uproot the self-grasping ignorance.
So what is afflictions? Please,
Afflictions or negative emotions or mental disturbations. For example, anger, desire, jealousy, pride, anxiety, depression, sadness. The Buddha actually, you know, taught for several decades and talked about 84,000 afflictions. But this list of 84,000 is actually not even final. You know, there are countless afflictions, all sorts of, you know, random things that come in our mind because of the self-grasping ignorance and because of this impression that we are the center of the universe.
do we carry afflictions from last birth as well?
Can you say again?
Do we carry afflictions from last past birth as well?
We carry affliction from past lives. Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes, until they are eliminated from the root, then indeed we carry them. So when we talk about Buddha nature, the term Buddha is actually a Sanskrit word which means fully awakened. It is a consciousness that is fully developed, a mind that has achieved all qualities, a mind that doesn't have anything left to be perfected. It refers to a mind, it refers to a being, it refers to a consciousness that has reached perfection, basically, due to being liberated, due to being purified from all the afflictions, all the that are adventitious, and all the obscurations to peerless happiness, all the obscurations to omniscience, all the obscurations to knowledge. So when we talk about Buddha nature, it is a little bit like, when we were kids, and let's say you are in Himachal Pradesh, taking a walk in a forest, and you are with one of your parents and you find a seed on the floor. For example, an acorn. I think it doesn't grow in Delhi, right? That's why I'm talking about Himachal Pradesh. Everybody sees what an acorn is, or a nok nut. So as a kid, you find that on the floor and you ask your parent, what is this? And so your parent will simply say that this is an acorn, and that if all the conditions are gathered, this acorn will later transform into an oak tree, right? But what is this acorn in reality? Well, it is the potential to become an oak tree. And the Buddha tells us that it is the same with our consciousness, with our mind. The real nature, its real nature of our mind is a mind that is completely purified, completely developed, a Buddha. So actually, in general, when we talk about Buddha, we talk about the Buddha, and we refer to a being who was actually born here in India, in present-day Nepal, in Lumbini, and he was born as Prince Siddhartha 2,500 years ago. So he was born as a prince, and show the aspect of being born, as the son of the king. And the king wanted to protect him because there was a prophecy when he was born that he would either become a great king or a meditator. And so his father got a little bit, anxious about that. He didn't want his son, of course, to become a meditator. He wanted, his heir, to become a great king. So the king actually protected him, like not allowing him to go to the village, remaining in the palace, so that he would not see any form of, what is actually happening outside, like people getting sick, people dying, and so forth. That he would only experience pleasant things within the palace. But nevertheless, one day he managed, with one of his helpers, to go to the village and saw, people were sick, people were dying, and so forth. And it triggered an immense compassion in him, a wish that these people don't experience sickness, death, and so forth. So then he decided to actually leave, the palace and actually find a way to free people from suffering. So he met with several masters, who taught him meditation. And gradually, he looked at his mind until he found a state of peace, but he thought, this peace that I'm experiencing, like I'm not experiencing afflictions in my mind while I'm in this deep concentration, in this deep meditation, but people are still, suffering from old age, sickness outside. So this is not the final. So eventually, the Buddha, after sitting in meditation for several years, found what we call the middle way. That is this wisdom that realizes reality being free from objective existence, true existence, and also being free from non-existence, somewhere in the middle way. So through constant familiarization with the middle way, what we call the wisdom realizing the emptiness of objective existence, through constant familiarization and realization of the middle way, eventually the Buddha became, eventually Prince Siddhartha became the Buddha, became awakened. So in general, when we talk about the Buddha, we refer to the historical Buddha. But a Buddha, as I was explaining, is a Sanskrit term that refers to this mind that is completely purified, that has achieved all the qualities, all the perfections. And we all have the potential to become a Buddha, and there are countless Buddhas, just like there are countless mind possessors who are, under the sway of this misapprehension of reality, under the sway of this self-grasping ignorance. Just like there are numberless sentient beings, there are numberless beings who have achieved Buddhahood, who have achieved full awakening. And a Buddha, we can say that it is as if he has two wings. One would be an incredible sense of empathy, an infinite compassion for all beings, as if all beings, were a part of ourselves. We feel for them as we feel for ourselves. It is a spontaneous, uncontrived wish to always be perfectly beneficial to others. And the second wing is a wing of wisdom that is fully developed. We literally call it omniscience, a mind that knows all phenomena and therefore has the skillful means to help beings who are trapped in the prison of their own mind, who are trapped in their karmic appearances. So the Buddha tells us that if we possess a mind, then we have the potential to reach this state and know all phenomena of the past, present, and future. Our mind has this potential. Once we have purified our consciousness from all the afflictive and cognitive obscurations, then we will be aligned with reality. So the Buddha says that at the moment we don't perceive reality as it is because of all the mental pollution that we have. But when we actually apprehend reality as it is, that is when we have this wisdom that apprehends phenomena as being empty of objective existence, of independent, intrinsic, inherent existence, this is the direct antidote to all our mental problems, to all our afflictions, which are all rooted in the self-grasping ignorance. So the wisdom that apprehends phenomena, including the self, as being empty of objective existence, empty of independent existence, is the exact opposite of the self-grasping ignorance. So it is the direct antidote. It is the antidote, it is that which purifies our minds. So a third quality that the Buddha has, he has this incredible compassion, incredible wisdom. He also has perfect power, a perfect strength. We could even call it omnipotence. The Buddha, can manifest whatever is necessary in order to be of benefit to beings. So this is the Buddha, full awakening or enlightenment, as you were saying. It's not, merely a pleasant feeling. It's much, much, much more than that. And the Buddha tells us that it is actually what we are in essence. It is our nature, like the acorn, that has the potential to transform into the oak tree. if a child, comes back from school, home, and has a homework, a science homework, and doesn't know, how to do it, and asks the mother, Mom, can you help me with my science homework? She might say, sorry, but I know nothing, about science. Then let's say, this child goes to the neighbor, because the neighbor is a great top scientist. But the neighbor says, sorry, I don't have time. Then he goes to the father, who studied science at school and has some, memories of it. And the father says, sorry, son, I'm so sick, I'm stuck in bed and I cannot help you today. So the mother is lacking knowledge. The neighbor is lacking, love for the child. He has more important things to do than helping the child. Then the father is lacking strength, is lacking power, He has the knowledge, he has the love, but he doesn't, he's sick, so he cannot help the kid. So the Buddha has all the three qualities: perfect love, perfect knowledge, and perfect power. So these are the qualities we can achieve. Not only to solve science homeworks, but to help all sentient beings who are trapped in the vicious prison of their mind to get liberated from that, to get liberated from samsara, liberated from cyclic existence. So here I wanted to talk a little bit about the 4 seals of the Buddha's teachings. All composite things are impermanent. All contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. All phenomena are of the nature of emptiness and selflessness. Transcending sorrow is peace. So the first seal, is talking about impermanence. We have, this impression that we are eternal. We don't, think that we are going to die. We don't think this is going to happen, but it is going to happen, right? We live as if we were immortal. We are planning, our holidays next year. We are, when we are in college, we think, okay, 5 years now studying, and then find some job, and then, find a partner, have children, as if, we knew that we would live 100 years. But if we check in actuality, we don't have any certainty. The only thing we know is that for sure, at one point or the other, we will pass away. Similarly, this is talking about gross impermanence. Impermanence, there are 2. There is also what we call subtle impermanence. Similarly, if we look at our body, for example, with a microscope, or any object with a microscope, we see that it's constantly moving, constantly buzzing, constantly changing. So the Buddha teaches us that all things that are composed are actually, constantly undergoing change. And this is something, we fail to recognize. And this is something that, creates more mental perturbations in us, disturbations in us. Then the second seal says, all contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. So, as I was saying in the beginning, even the positive actions we do, the virtuous actions we do, such as helping others, practicing generosity, like the beggar, giving 20 rupees to the beggar. So this leaves a positive imprint, this leaves a positive karma. And the result of that is a pleasant experience within samsara, within cyclic existence. So as long as I have this self-grasping ignorance, apprehending phenomena existing solidly, intrinsically, objectively, independently from the mind, all the good actions that I do, all the positive karmas that I accumulate, they will ripen in the form of a pleasure within samsara. So what the Buddha is telling us here in this second seal is that all the pleasures that we indulge in, are the result of the positive karmas we have accumulated. But in fact, they are happening within samsara. It is a little bit like, I used to have a teacher who used to illustrate this by saying, it is as if we live in a septic tank. And instead of going out of the septic tank, we make it nice. We put some nice posters, we put some perfume, So the pleasant experiences that we have, Geshe Dorji Damdul puts it as they are like a bait, that traps us, that maintains us in samsara, like making the septic tank nice instead of just going out of the septic tank. All phenomena are of the nature of emptiness and selflessness. This is the antidote to samsara, the antidote to our mental problems, the antidote to our afflictions. It is the direct opposite of the root, which is the self-grasping ignorance, the root of the afflictions, this apprehension that everything exists solidly, objectively. Seeing that they lack this intrinsic nature is the liberating path that eliminates the afflictions. And so the Buddha, in this third seal, says that all phenomena, there is not one phenomena that is not in the nature of emptiness, of objective existence. Even emptiness of objective existence itself is empty of objective existence. Transcending sorrow is peace. Transcending sorrow, or nirvana, or liberation, is the absolute peace, is the result of constantly, applying this wisdom that sees all phenomena as being empty of objective existence, constantly meditating on that emptiness again and again and again. Eventually one will reach nirvana, liberation. The Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. So this stanza is basically telling us that it is in our hands, when we recognize that samsara is our condition, that we are trapped in our own mind. Only ourselves, can free our mind from our own mind. It's not like the Buddha or any other being can come, and remove the afflictions for us. So the Buddha, has found the middle way, has meditated on the emptiness of objective existence, has eliminated all the afflictions and all the obscurations to knowledge until he became a Buddha. So he showed us the path. He showed us how to reproduce the same for ourselves. So if we want, to free ourselves from our mental problems, from the unpleasant experiences of samsara, it is our job to listen to what the Buddha is teaching, to reflect on what we have learned from the Buddha's teachings, and then finally to meditate, So here I have a few verses to illustrate why it is important to study the mind. The Dhammapada says, "Mind is the chief and precedes them all. If with impure mind one acts or speaks, miseries follow like a cart following the ox. Mind is the chief and precedes them all. If with pure mind one acts or speaks, happiness follows, like a shadow that never leaves. Then Acharya Vasubandhu in the Abhidharma Kosha says, the diversity of the world arose from karmas, which in turn is the intention and its actions. Intention is the mental karma. What gives rise to by the intention are physical and verbal. And finally, Acharya Chandrakirti in the Madhyamikavatara says, it is the mind itself that constructed the sentient world, as well as the utterly diverse container world. So the Buddha taught that all beings are produced from karma. Without mind, there can be no karma. So it is actually our mind, our consciousness, that guides our physical actions, that guides our speech. So therefore our mind, is at the root of all the karmas that we accumulate. And the karmas we accumulate, they result in everything that we experience. All the pleasure, all the pains that we have are the results of these karmas. So we study the mind because it makes us understand how, our deceptive minds make us suffer. It is only by knowing our true enemy that we can eliminate it. The true enemy of the afflictions rooted in the self-grasping ignorance. So in order to become liberated, in order to achieve nirvana, and in order to achieve awakening, it is essential to understand how our mind works. It is our mind that is afflicted, and it is our mind itself that will allow us to become liberated and happy by eliminating our mental veils, our mental obscurations. We can see the importance of the mind. Someone who has a lot of money, and material wealth can be an unhappy person. So the mental aspect is essential. The elimination of our mental perturbations is an inner process, a mental process that transforms our minds. So if we want to be happy, it is therefore essential to know what is the mind and how it functions. So I went through everything I wanted to talk about. So now I would like to invite more questions. If you still have questions, please feel free to ask. Here in person, just speak up, and on Zoom you can unmute yourselves, because I've seen that you wrote a lot of things on the chat, but it would be better, if possible, if you can unmute yourself and speak up your questions, please.
So if we give if we make our mind conscious, so in that sense we can liberate from all the old karmas which we have done from past lives, and which we are following in a way of jealous, anger, or some bad mouthing, or all such things, right?
Could you repeat your question, please? I didn't hear very well.
So my question is, if we are taking the path of consciousness, our aim should be that mind to be fully conscious, like Buddha. So if we are aiming towards that, it means when we have little consciousness, maybe 1% or 2%, and it means from last many years, last past life, we are having the same consciousness, 2%, right? So in this lifetime, if we will go with the path of Buddha, increase our consciousness, all the past karma, all the deeds which we have done this lifetime or last lifetime will be removed. All the karmas will be removed, bad karmas basically.
What do you mean by consciousness, 1%, 2%?
Awareness.
But what do you mean 1%, 2%?
Means awareness of basically good awareness of our life, how to lead a good life, basically. A life without having all this, jealous, anger, such things.
So, we have been we have been with the afflictions,
Yes, affliction.
with the mental disturbations since beginningless time, since time immemorial. So they are deeply, rooted in us. So in order to, eliminate them, it is a very long journey. Since beginningless time, we have habituated ourselves thinking that everything exists so objectively, out there, so solidly.
Mm.
Since beginningless time, we have habituated ourselves with the thought that we are the center of the universe, with the thought that we are more important than others. Since beginningless time, we have had minds of anger, jealousy, pride, and so forth. We are so familiar with those minds that it requires a lot of time and effort to apply the opposite minds.
Okay.
So it is a long journey, but it is definitely possible. In Tibet, there's a being who was known as Milarepa. You might probably have heard about Milarepa. So it is said that, despite, his life story is such that his father passed away and I think his uncle, took over the family and the possessions of the family. And basically, stole the possessions and the freedom from Milarepa, his mother, and maybe his siblings. And so his mother, when he became of age, when Milarepa became of age, his mother asked Milarepa to kind of do something about it and ask for revenge, against the uncle and the aunt. So Milarepa went about and learned black magic and killed a lot of people, caused great harm to the uncle, the aunt, and the whole village. So despite, having committed these acts out of anger as a revenge, Milarepa felt regret, for what he has done and went in quest of a master that could, make him understand his mind and make him purify his mind from these evil deeds that he had done. So eventually he ran into a Tibetan Lama, a Buddhist master, and learned about the mind, learned about, the afflictions and the wisdom of emptiness. And through a lot of effort, sitting in meditation and preparing his mind even before the meditation, purifying his mind, eventually he achieved awakening, he achieved the state of a Buddha, even though in the same life he has committed these evil deeds. So this shows us that this story shows us that it is possible if all the conditions are there, if our minds are prepared and purified, it is possible to transform our mind.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other question? Okay, if you don't have more questions, what we can do is take a moment to dedicate the energy, that we have amassed here by contemplating what is the mind, where it comes from, how it can be transformed, what potential does it have, what is the meaning of Buddha. So all these thoughts, all this energy that we have accumulated here, we can take a moment to dedicate it so that we may soon, very soon, free our minds from our afflictions, so that we may soon achieve the state of nirvana, liberation, and so that we may soon achieve the state of full awakening, the state of a Buddha, in order to be able to help others So here I have a few dedication verses that we can read together. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, and all the merits of the 3 times collected by the numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who is completely empty of existing from my own side. May the supreme bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness that have not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase forevermore. Due to all the merits of the 3 times collected by me, the numberless Buddhas and the numberless sentient beings, may all wars, sickness, famine, and economic problems in the world, and all dangers of earth, water, fire, and wind be pacified immediately, and may perfect peace and happiness prevail in everyone's hearts and lives. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time, and may the sentient beings in this world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Then we can also dedicate for the long life of our spiritual teachers, our virtuous friends, for them to, continue to give us the methods, to teach us the methods to get freed from our own minds. And in particular, we pray for the long and healthy life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. May His Holiness live long and continue to teach us the Dharma of Buddha Shakyamuni. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, the source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here and online. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. We have a visiting Sangha member. We have a visiting monastic, Venerable Tupten Drolkar. She's a very inspiring German nun who actually met the teachings of the Buddha when she was very young. And she has been studying the teachings of the Buddha also for about 10 years. And at the moment, she's actually studying the Geshe program, the Geshe curriculum at the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics in Dharamsala. This is where our own Geshe Dorji Damdul also studied. So she's very inspiring, and she's going to give a talk about the difference between Dharma and Drama. How to, apply the Dharma in our lives and how to transform the drama that we might experience into Dharma. So this will be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Here in person as well as online. So you're very welcome to join. And this will be our last event here before the summer break. So in June and July, we'll mostly not have programs. We might have a few programs, in which case we'll inform you over our WhatsApp group. But most likely, most of the time, we won't have programs during that period. And until then, also until Friday morning, we carry on with the morning meditation that is happening online on Zoom from 9 to 9:30. So you're most welcome to join. There are 4 more sessions before the summer break. It's 9 to 9:30, the online guided meditation. It's only on Zoom. Only on Zoom, only online, on internet. Yeah. Tomorrow evening here is the last event of the season. Tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.